June has been such a busy month, full of travel, fashion, and lots of making things. I've been wanting to share everything that's been going on social media, but at the same time, I really value being in the moment. So I decided we could sit down, have a little chat, and I could share everything I've been up to for the entire month of June. Hi, it's good to see you again. My name is Rebecca. I share statement making, sustainable fashion here on YouTube and on all of the social platforms. In this little June recap, I'm going to be sharing some life stuff where I traveled to in the past month, as well as some fun crochet projects that I finished while on those trips, like this lovely green monstrosity that you see here. I'm going to be telling you about some of my favorite outfits that I wore this month. And there was a surprisingly steep competition, I think, between having some fun events with girlfriends and different travel, especially to Italy. And I've narrowed it down to a top 3. I also finished a fashion design course that I have mixed feelings about, and I want to share some learnings from that as well. Okay, so first up, let me address the elephant or microphone in the room. I have a new setup. I got this fancy looking microphone because after 5 episodes and hours of audio editing, it has become clear that my podcast Threaded Together that I host with my friend and sewing genius Tracy is only gathering steam and isn't going anywhere. So I invested in a better microphone so that I'm not consistently editing out my own breathing when I'm talking and recording the podcast, but it also allows me to experiment with some more interesting setups. So let me know what you think. I do like chatting with you like this, but it's definitely a new little setup for me. So we'll see how it goes. Up first, traveling. So the first weekend in June, my husband and I took a trip to the Australian Alps. It has been a hot June here in Germany, and the cool breeze of the mountains was truly a breath of fresh air. Pardon the cliche. I finished a crochet project on my way up there, a sweater made out of macrame cording that was inspired by a sweater I had seen the blogger B. Jones Style wearing, and you've probably seen me wearing it on social media or my other video where I share kind of all of the learnings about playing around with macrame cord, but I absolutely love that sweater. The weekend was a super casual one. It was something associated with, my husband's work, and we all love a free weekend getaway. But one of the highlights was my very first Alpine swim adventure, which was amazing. So I'm not usually a very daring person, but I'm trying to work on that. And I had fully committed to jumping in this freezing cold Alpine lake in the middle of our hike, even though like every fiber of my being did not want to jump in this lake. It did help that my husband jumped in first. He's more adventurous than I am, but I have to say I did stay in the longest. I fully achieved like the numbness that can happen. And oh my gosh, I'm absolutely in love. I would like an Alpine lake in my backyard I can just jump into after every single workout. That would be amazing. So that was the highlight of that trip. The second epic adventure that I had this month was a girls' weekend. My husband was away, and I had some city-dwelling girlfriends come over and spend the weekend at my house like we were a bunch of middle schoolers having a massive sleepover, and it was so much fun. I'm finding in my 30s that female friendship is just so valuable, and I'm loving basically regressing into my teens and hanging out with all of my girlfriends. One of my favorite outfits of the month came from a wine night with one of those friends where I told her I was full on dopamine dressing, and I meant it. And it was just so much fun walking through the streets wearing this absolutely epic outfit. I wore a pair of shorts that I had hemmed right before the dinner, which if you're somebody who does last minute work, that's like, that is a risky thing to do, but it actually worked really well. The shorts were older H&M Studios, kind of a silky linen blend, and I ended up reinforcing them to get them to hold a cuff, which was awesome. I wore a bucket hat by sustainable designer Freya Simone that just topped everything off, and an H&M dress that I wear almost more often as like a shirt and like tuck it into shorts, and then a pair of sandals from Suacoca that were a collaboration one with Cecily Bonson. Who doesn't need like flower embellishments on what otherwise look like tivas? Like, it was a whole mood and one of my favorite outfits of the month. Another travel adventure I had in the month of June was my husband and I went on a road trip through the Dolomites in Italy, which, if you don't know, is a mountain range in northeastern Italy, and it is beyond breathtaking. The roads we drove on were mostly mountain passes, but we did actually end up encountering a bike race while we were on that drive, and it was quite entertaining, to say the least. Outfit planning was a big one for this particular trip because a lot of the day was spent in the car, which meant managing kind of comfort sitting down for several hours, the heat that can sometimes happen in the car because we don't have AC, and also stops at some of the highest points in the mountains, which can be cold and windy at times. And of course, outfits for dinner out and about in Italy. Last year, we did an Alps tour at about the same time, but it was unseasonably hot, I'm now learning. It was an absolute scorcher, and I was sweating like crazy all of last year. So I took that into account with my outfit planning this year. And luckily, there only really ended up being one really cold morning. We have a Pendleton blanket that stays in the car just in case there's some very cold day where I need a little bit of extra warmth. So I ended up wearing that around, very much like Justin Bieber and his crochet blanket that I saw him wearing recently. We are making it the new fashion trend. I had two outfits that competed for my favorites on this trip. One was the driving outfit on day 2 that included this incredible top that I had made as part of the class that I was taking, and I was trying to figure out kind of the final shape and design. My other favorite outfit was that evening we went out to just like a little aperitif hour. If you're familiar with Italy, it's a big thing, at this teeny little spot up in the mountains. Had some great charcuterie, had some Prosecco, got to watch the cows come in for the evening. And if you don't know, like, mountain cows are such a huge thing in Germany and in Italy, and they're something that you just really grow to love if you live in kind of one of these regions. In fact, certain towns, like a town called Garmisch in Bavaria, actually have festivals when the cows come home out of the mountains permanently in the fall, which is just so lovely. As for the outfit itself, I was wearing a pair of trousers that I made that are everybody's favorite wide leg pants, a Nicolas Guesquier era Balenciaga top that was just perfect for Italy with the print, the color, everything. Perhaps one of my favorite outfits I've worn in a long time. And then for that first outfit, it was this worn with a vintage t-shirt and a pair of shorts that I had crocheted that I was so excited I got done in time for the trip. I did get some interesting comments from some of my traveling companions about this outfit, specifically the top, even though it didn't have kind of the pool floaties on it quite yet. But if my clothing and design choices aren't making them question the world around them, then I'm not doing my job. So if you are enjoying this video, make sure you hit that like button so I get that feedback and know that you're enjoying this type of content. So on to the fashion class that I was taking. On my podcast, Threaded Together, I know I've talked in the past about how I've taken a lot of more like design-oriented fashion classes online as I was transitioning out of the corporate world. And I've taken these classes to kind of try to bridge gaps in my particular skill set and to see kind of what I could teach myself versus what I needed to learn in a classroom setting, and also to just see kind of like what the industry expects you to know if you're pursuing fashion design. So with this particular class, it was an experimental design course, and what really threw me off was it actually started back in April and was only supposed to be 6 weeks, and then it ended in the middle of June. It was because of all of the crazy British holidays, the coronation, that it just dragged on and on and on. And in a class like this, you do the full design process from beginning research to the end. You actually present like a mini collection, not fully made, but you do some prototyping along the way. And I personally have a really hard time not kind of like immersing myself in that process and having that be something that I'm thinking about all of the time. And so it was a really long time to be kind of obsessing over one topic without tons to show for it, since we weren't supposed to like jump forward on homework or anything. And I still struggled with that a little bit. So long story short, it's been a year since I did my first experimental design course, which was in the middle of July. I have grown so much in my skill set. I can now sketch, albeit, I'm not going to do that professionally with my life, but I can show concepts on paper, I think is a huge win. And I understand kind of the traditional end-to-end design process, but I have learned that I actually kind of hate being kind of prescriptively told what to do when, because so much of it is about kind of trying to find that inspiration and bring it to life, and having to like fit it into boxes and not be able to like go back and iterate multiple times, which I've learned is part of my process. I find very challenging. I actually learned so much more from doing rather than just studying things. So one of the takeaways that I had from this particular course was, instead of continuing to invest in kind of like what that process should be, I need to spend a lot more time just making and doing the things, since that's really where my learning curve kicks in and accelerates significantly. So circling back to this magical little green top that I made, I had drawn it initially, but I really wanted to see kind of how it would work, how the material would look in real life. So I started crocheting it just to see what would happen. And I ended up, like I said, wearing that in progress piece in the Dolomites, which was really fun because it was rippling too much in the front initially. And so I ended up unraveling it and redoing it, and then also increasing the shoulder on this side. So as you can see, my process is much more create as I go. And then once this was done, I had a million more ideas for, if this was the anchor point of a collection, how different shapes could be reused in different places to then create something that was very avant-garde. But I did need to see how this particular texture, this is just like a recycled cotton with a little bit of elastic in it, how it reacted and how that shape formed, and could it hold this huge, massive like bell sleeve, before I could really see like how I might want to evolve that in the design space. And I guess that makes sense too if you think about the Met Gala look that I created back in February, because I did cut out some of the pieces initially, but even like the trousers, like all of the detailing ended up being draped more on the body. So again, as I go forward with any sort of classes, I think I'm going to focus on something that's much more hands-on, potentially some more draping. But I'm also just going to try to like make more shit as I go forward to continue to accelerate that learning and design development. And if you like hearing about my design class experience, make sure you stay tuned for our next podcast from Threaded Together. It's been exactly a year since I did my couture tailoring jacket making course in London, where I met my podcast co-host, Tracy, who's amazing. And so we're going to spend an entire episode talking about that experience and what were the most valuable pieces that we learned, because there were a lot of just like really incredible hacks that we learned from our instructor, who was beyond a wealth of knowledge. She was just an absolute artist in what she could do with tailoring. And as a part of that process as well, I have committed to making a full tailored blazer. We did half a blazer and didn't do the lining, but we did all of the seaming and all of the pad stitching and all of that stuff before. So I'm committing to doing one before that episode is done. So if you want to hear about that process, make sure you're checking out our podcast, Threaded Together. So that was my month of June. It was busy, full of lots of fun statement making fashion. And I love getting an opportunity to catch you up on it. So let me know what you thought of this particular format. This is kind of new to me. And of course, you can always find me on all socials at Rebecca in Europe. And you know I'm chatty. Leave me a comment, shoot me a message. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.